In this lesson, we're going to begin blocking in our sketch for our 2D avatar based off of a photo reference. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is an avatar? Well, an avatar is basically a graphical representation of a user's alter ego or character. Now, an avatar can take on a three-dimensional form, something like you would see in games with virtual worlds, or a two-dimensional form, something kind of like an icon. And we see examples of 2D avatars on internet forums, online chat, and especially mobile games. There are a lot of card-playing games, chess games, where we see these little avatars that, again, basically represent a user who might be playing that game. Now, most avatars are small in size, and they may come equipped with an array of expressions that a user can choose from to convey their overall mood based off of their experience in a particular game. And so that's what we're basically going to be doing for this entire course, is designing a two-dimensional avatar. Now, an avatar can be really anything you want, anything you want to represent you as the user. So it could be a robot, or an animal, or a desk lamp. I mean, it can be anything. And so what we're going to do is actually create an avatar based off of a photo reference. And I've just clicked on this tab here, bringing up this geeky, kind of silly looking guy that clearly has a lot of animated qualities to his expression. And so we're going to design a somewhat stylistic caricature of him for our 2D avatar. And we're going to explore things like what to keep in mind as the avatar is shrunken down and what will read well visually. So before we begin, let's go ahead and set up our work environment here, as well as our tools that we'll be using. So I'm just going to go up here to Window, and I'm going to go to Arrange, and then in this tab over here, I'm going to click on 2 Up Vertical. And this is basically splitting our canvas windows. And this will allow me to sketch on my canvas that I have set up over here to the screen right, while still looking at my reference photo over here to the screen left. And I may want to go ahead and drag this window, or this panel rather, just over this way. That way we'll have plenty of room just when zooming in and out. Now let's go ahead and go over to our tool panel, and I'm just going to grab my brush tool. And we're going to go ahead and set it up to where we can control our opacity and flow when sketching. So I'm going to go over here to the screen right. Over here by my swatches panel, I'm going to look for my brush panel button. And just clicking on that, I'm brought to some of our settings here. And the two settings I'm going to focus on are transfer and shape dynamics. So I'm going to go ahead and click this box here and turn on transfer. And I'm going to want to instill pressure sensitivity for both opacity and flow. So underneath each one of these categories, we have a control for both of those. So just expanding that, I'm going to want to set each control to pin pressure. This will allow me to control my opacity and flow based off of the pressure I apply with my stylus. And we're going to go ahead and turn on shape dynamics, and just making sure we click on that, or select that rather, after checking the box. And I'm going to want to have pin pressure enabled for the size of my brush tip. So just setting at the pin pressure. Again, this will allow me to control the size of my brush tip as I apply it to the canvas. So you may see me jump over here to these settings from time to time, whether I'm sketching or painting, and adjusting one or two of these settings appropriately. So let's go ahead and close that. And before we begin, let's make sure we're got our tab up here selected for the canvas I'll be working on. And if you see over here in our Layers panel, I've created a group which I've titled Base Expression. And this is where we're going to basically be fleshing out our main expression for our avatar based off of our photo reference. So most avatars have an initial expression, kind of a primary expression that they'll start out with that the user may want to use. And then there'll be some additional expressions that they may want to cycle through, just different moods that they may want to present. So let's go ahead and expand this group, and we can see that I've also added a layer within this group, which I've titled Sketch Blocking. So this is where we'll begin just blocking out our sketch for our goofy looking guy over here. So I'm kind of seeing this guy as an overall shape right now. I'm just looking at his head, and it reminds me very much of a light bulb. It's very, very wide here at the top, kind of bulbous, and it kind of tapers down. And this probably has a lot to do with how his neck is being kind of scrunched into his head, how he's kind of pulling his chin inward. So we definitely want to play his overall head shape up quite a bit. So I'm just starting with the cranium of his head, just as a big circle. And I'm just going to want to kind of bring it down just a little bit. Again, I'm thinking of it as being kind of a light bulb. So just kind of working in that overall shape. Now again, as I've said earlier, throughout this entire course, the thing that we're going to be really trying to focus on is what reads well at a small size. So since we're making a stylistic caricature of this guy, we're going to look for certain elements on his face that we can push further, and we're going to probably zoom out a few times to really see how those elements are reading visually when they're shrunken down. So I'm kind of working in some basic shapes here just for the ears and the nose. He has a pretty prominent nose, and so I'm thinking I may want to really play that up quite a bit. So I'm just kind of roughly blocking in just some lines here where I think his glasses may go. He has some pretty large glasses, so that'll definitely be a feature that I want to push when designing this guy. Now, since he is a stylistic cartoon, that doesn't necessarily, or a stylistic rendition rather, it doesn't mean I want to give him these really large cartoony eyes necessarily. I'm kind of thinking of, how certain elements will balance out each other in designing this character. Coming down here to the mouth, his mouth really shows a lot of his character. Just the way it kind of tapers off there in the corners, really giving him those kind of weird smile lines on the side, some of these kind of wrinkles right here. And his chin comes down quite a ways too. So that's starting to feel pretty nice. I'm actually going to go ahead and hit Control-T on my keyboard. Let's go ahead and free transform this, and I'm just holding down Shift as I drag in a corner. Just bringing it up a little bit larger, just so we can see everything a little more clearly. So just kind of focusing on this overall shape. Now, he's not just going to be a floating head. We're going to want him to have kind of a bust down here. Now, this bust, we're going to make it a lot smaller because, again, the focus of this avatar is going to be the facial expressions. So we don't want the bust to really compete as far as size and proportion go. So I'm just roughing in the collar and the tie for his bust area down here, for his shirt area. That's feeling pretty nice. All right, so again, this is just one way to begin kind of blocking out your sketch for your avatar. Now, if you don't have a particular photo reference that you're working from, you can start any which way that's comfortable for you. But since we're working from a photo, I just kind of want to examine it and just kind of lay some groundwork. And you also may notice that I'm using just a blue color for my sketching. I like to use blue just because later on I'm going to lower the opacity of my sketch layer. And when I start adding additional features and later on line work, it just allows for a nice contrast when applying those additional lines. All right, well, I think we're at a good point. We can really kind of continue on refining and getting our shapes pretty much where we want. But in the next lesson, what we're going to focus on is adding those additional facial features and really starting to flesh out our sketch. So before we go forward, let's just zoom out one more time just to see how everything is looking shrunken down. And I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. The shape of the nose, the ears, and the mouth, I think are all going to read really well. So again, in the next lesson, we'll begin adding in those facial features for our 2D avatar.